To the cloud. Thanks for joining us and welcome back to the Contrarians. Tonight we've got a Patreon suggested topic, Blue Öyster Cult's The Symbol Remains. Is it overrated or is it a fantastic comeback album? So we've got our panel of experts, including the original Contrarian, Martin Popoff. Martin, let's start with you. What do you think about this album?
Wow. So this is kind of a weird one. I quite like it, but I don't love it. I was always kind of enthusiastic for it. There was a couple of advanced tracks that we got, to really kind of listen to and figure out what we thought. And that was me and Box in My Head, which are very different from each other. So those came out and everybody started discussing this album. It's a long album in terms of having 14 very uniform songs on it. Let me say this first of all. So when I saw the album cover, first of all, I didn't like the album cover. I thought it was not very imaginative for Blue Öyster Cult. I thought they could have done better. It's classy and glossy looking and all that, and powerful, but it's not very creative, right? And then still something bothers me. I don't know. This could almost be a whole topic one day, but there's albums where you feel that there's something kind of casual about the production. It's not that it's bad production and you can't even figure out what you don't like about it, but it just seems like maybe I've had it drilled into me for so long that this is a band on a major label all their lives. And then for something, except for, heaven forbid and curse the hidden mirror. But there's something about this album that sounds a little raw, even though there's all sorts of nice appointments and harmonies and all that sort of stuff. So just something bothers me about the production. It sounds a little rough to me, when I don't even know if I'm just making that up. Now, when I go through this record, this is another thing that kind of bothers me about it a little bit is I'm surprised that I like all the poppy, mellower songs with Buck singing, but I'm not that crazy about the heavy ones. And I usually like both with Blue Öyster Cult, because Blue Öyster Cult is one of my favorite bands of all time. And I love Eric singing. Eric's doing an amazing job singing, and so is Buck. So that's great. But you've got Richie singing on 3 songs, I think it is. And I want to get used to his voice. I love him in there. I know he's like a great utilitarian guy. He's super talented. He's a writer. I'm not quite used to his voice as a Blue Öyster Cult singer yet. I really think it's a really cool idea that he's in there because he could slowly take over, and this band could go for another 20 years or something, right? You just keep replacing members here and there, sort of thing, right? You got Jules is a great drummer as well, but So I'm not loving the heavy songs for some reason. They don't go far enough, or they're not powerful enough or something, or they mix in kind of melodic elements with the heavy. I don't quite know what it is, but that was me actually is a really good one. Although lyrically, there's a little bit of a lyrical trope to that one as well. But I love Box in My Head. It's a good kind of poppy kind of tune. I'm one of the guys who likes Train Song. A lot of people hate that song. Or Train True, Lenny's song. Sorry. I love the sped up part of it. It's really cool. And I love Florida Man with Buck singing. And I love with all this Florida politics that's going on in the world, and Buck being a New Yorker who lives in Florida. It's kind of weird and cool to have Buck singing, "Hey, I'm a Florida man," kind of thing. It's neat. And I really like Secret Road, which is kind of like a boogie, poppy, a little bit jazzy thing with Buck singing. And then at the end, Fight, which is another one Buck sings. Really cool kind of lyric. I love the way it ends with "Last one, turn out the light," saying last song after 14 songs, turn out the light. But a lot of the rest of it, I do have this, I'm finding a lot of like 7 out of 10 Eric sung heavy ones on it. And I don't like the particularly mellow one that Richie sings, the one that reminds me of Meatloaf a little bit. It's just kind of panoramic, a panoramic vampire theater Broadway song kind of thing. Right. So that's my take. A lot of songs, love the Buck stuff. Yeah, and it's a good, solid album. The fans are rating it really high. I mean, the fans seem to really like it a lot. So out of 10, I would probably go I would probably go 7.5 out of 10 on this. But yeah, it's just a lot of value on it anyways. But yeah, it just kind of strange. I forgot to mention Danny Miranda. He's in there too. So it's a really powerful lineup. You got the two elder guys, you got the two guys from the next generation, you got the one young guy, right? That sort of feel with this band. So it's yeah, a lot of firepower, a lot of songs, and just a lot of good Blue Öyster Cult ideas. But Heaven Forbid is still my favorite of the last three.
I'm actually with you on the Heaven Forbid. Okay, so pardon me, this is my first time hosting for the Contrarians. So I realized that I let the side down and did not give album facts before I got right into the commentary. So The Symbol Remains was the first album since 2001's The Curse of the Hidden Mirror. It did chart, sort of. It was 192 out of 200 in the Billboard Top 200. That's what they call tickling the bottom of the charts, right? But it did make number 10 on Billboard's hard rock albums. And thinking back to 2020, I am really having a hard time imagining what the other 9 albums on that were. It's got generally positive reviews. It got 77 out of 100 on Metacritic, 4 out of 5 stars on both AllMusic and Louder Sound. And what I think is absolutely amazing about this album is that Eric Bloom turned 73 2 months after this album was released. Buck Dharma was 71.
I think Eric's 77 now, isn't he?
Yeah, but it was released in 2020. So
okay,
that was 2 years ago.
All right.
So he turned
75 then.
Oh, 75, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Good grief. Yes, he turned 75 and Buck Dharma was 73.
Okay.
So pretty remarkable for a late period album. So when we talk about a comeback album, there are some potential things to consider. Now, let's go over to Todd. Todd, what do you think about The Symbol Remains?
Well, I'm really going to mess up the curve because I think this is a dynamite album. I have to just go ahead and say right up front that I'm a relatively new fan of BOC. I always liked BOC, but as far as when I actually collected the entire discography, it was just about 3 years ago. And I have always been a big Buck Dharma fan. I mean, in my short period with, being a BOC fan, but I always gravitate towards the Buck Dharma songs. But this album is the first album where I actually heard Eric Bloom songs that I didn't just think were okay and just like all right, but that I was really enthusiastic about. That was me. I mean, it's just the vocal performance is just dripping with personality. And I just think it's funny. It's funny without sounding like it's a comedy song. It's like just witty enough. I think Box in My Head is great. I promise I'm not going to go song by song with every song, but I'm going to talk about the first 3 the first 4 because I really like them. Box in My Head, I think, is a cool song. It's kind of a weird lyric. I had to get used to the lyric. There were a couple of parts of it that sort of made me scratch my head a little bit at first, but I've made my peace with it. I love the Burning for You chord at the end of it, which I think is really cool. I think Tainted Blood is just spectacular. I think that is just a really good vocal performance from Richie Castellano. I mean, I just feel like it's really soulful and emotional, and I just think the song is great. I think the song, the engineering of the song just sounds really good. And when I first heard the album, it kind of took me back, and I kind of did a double take, and I was like, wow, I mean, I've heard this album is good, but I think that song is just outstanding. Nightmare Epiphany, I love how it's fast and it kind of just cooks along, and the vocal is kind of goes real fast. He sings real fast, and it's kind of witty. I remember seeing The Alchemist. I think I saw the video for The Alchemist before I heard before I bought the album, and I thought it was great. I liked it so much I shared it on Facebook, which really surprised me. And I like Train True as well. But the song I really like a lot. I mean, like I was really surprised how much I liked it, is Fight. And I think that lyrically, it's just, I hate to use such flowery language, but I think it's really spectacular lyrically. The whole idea of it, the way I look at what the point they're trying to make is that for you to think about how ridiculous it is that somebody might actually say, well, there was supposed to be this fight, but nobody got hurt, so it wasn't really much fun. And I mean, and the way he describes it is just great. I mean, there are a lot of great lines in it, but I love no blood was spilled, nobody got killed, no one lurking in the shadows with bad intent. No ambulance sent, not even a dent. I just love that. I think that that's clever and fun, and man, I love that song. So I like the album a lot. I'm not going to give it a perfect score because while it would be difficult for me to think of songs to cut, I think 14 songs is too long. I like albums that are between 8 and 12 songs, and I think that this album had, you know, like 11 or 12. I think I probably would have given a higher score, but I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay. It's your rating. You can give it whatever you want. All right. Bill, what have you got for us?
All right. What I have is not what I actually thought I was going to have. When I suggested this topic originally, it's because I wanted to come up with something that was different from the normal things I do on these chats, which is to endlessly praise whatever artist, album, or song we're discussing. Because as much as I love Blue Öyster Cult, this was an extreme disappointment for me when it came out.
Wow.
I was really just left underwhelmed after 19-year wait since Curse. I was so excited, and you know, That Was Me came out. The video was fun. It was neat seeing Albert in there clanging his cowbell in the video, back in the band for that little cameo. A Box in My Head I was less enthused about. I just thought that was kind of an average Poppy Buck song, not one of his better ones. The Alchemist, that was the third song I heard because they did the video for that. While it's a good song, a good Eric vocal, and a nice Richie writing job, it felt like BOC by numbers. It's like Richie was going out of his way to make a song that was classic BOC for Eric to sing, and that kind of bugged me. Yeah. It wasn't natural. And I feel like there's a lot of that throughout this album. Yeah. And I'll echo what Martin said for sure about Richie. I love Richie in his skills and what he brings to the band, and he absolutely deserves to be here. He has earned his place in this band and on this album. It's great to have him and Jules finally on a recording. But yeah, I have a hard time hearing Richie as a Blue Öyster Cult member. Those vocals just are jarring to me. That said, I do like Richie's vocals, and I agree with Todd. Tainted Blood. In re-listening to this album recently, I've really come to like Tainted Blood quite a bit. It doesn't sound much like a Blue Öyster Cult song to me, but as a Richie song, I think it's pretty cool. And I will say, I've had to revise my view on this album overall because I find myself liking it more than I did initially. Some of these hooks are starting to get in. But there's a reason I wore this shirt. This is the Buck Dharma Archive shirt. This back in 2000, Donald Roser put out a bunch of his demos. And 2 of the demos made their way in new form onto Curse of the Hidden Mirror the following year. 19 years later, 2 more of those demos made it onto The Symbol Remains. And that also was one of the things that bugged me. It seemed, while it's great to reuse stuff, not let it go to waste, it also seemed like a bit lazy to me. Like, really, Don, you've had almost 20 years to write some stuff and you're still recycling stuff from the 90s with these John Shirley lyrics. So I think they can do better. I mean, maybe I'm giving them too much. I'm putting too high expectations on these guys. They're in their mid-70s. So I have to think of it that way, maybe. And maybe they just don't have as much spark as they used to. or motivation to write anymore, and that's fine. I mean,
Bill, do you mind? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know which two songs those were?
yes, Nightmare Epiphany and Secret Road. They were on volume 3 of the archive.
All right, cool. All right.
And I listened to the archive versions earlier to compare, and they're actually pretty similar here. Just a quick comparison. So,
yeah.
Now I have come to like those songs more in re-listening to The Symbol Remains more than I did when the archive first came out. I thought volume 3 of the archives was kind of a disappointment too when it was released, after really loving the first two, but it was scraping the bottom of the barrel a bit. And so I think maybe my view of those songs then also tainted my view of them when they were redone for this album, because I had that history with them. So I think maybe my expectations in general were too high for this album. And that's on me more than the band. But overall, though, as I said, I have softened to it. I think it's a pretty decent album, but I will say it is still my least favorite Blue Öyster Cult studio album. There's no doubt of that. I'll take Club Ninja, I'll take Revolution by Night, Curse, Heaven Forbid, any of the classic original 8. Yeah.
Wow.
So
interesting.
I'm not going to bury what's that?
I was going to say, you don't often hear Club Ninja's the better album brought up a lot.
Well, I do like Club Ninja. I've always been a fan of that one because that's the mid 80s are my era. So I like lots of stuff that people tend to hate from that era.
Can you give us a grade out of 10?
I'm going to go 6.5, which is probably the lowest I've ever rated an album on any of these discussions. And that's from a Blue Öyster Cult fan. So I don't know. I'm going to keep going at it. I'm encouraged by listening to it lately that I will come to like it more the more I listen to it. So there's definitely room to grow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was cool finding out that my opinion is changing after my initial impression.
Yeah. Neat.
Yeah. I don't think anybody should ever feel locked into an opinion, right? You take your circumstances into your music with you. So as you change with time, it's only natural your opinion of music should change with time, right?
Absolutely.
Now, Matt.
Okay, so I've been taking notes as we're going on. I feel like it's a political debate, and then when your opponent makes a comment and you're writing something down that you want to bring up as we're going along. So I'll try to address a few of the points that were made. Bill, you mentioned that this album's growing on you. I think one reason why that might be is that I think there's a lot of attention to detail in the album. Although, Martin, you found the production casual. There's a lot of there's a lot of Easter eggs in there. There's a lot of ear candy. There's a lot going on with the vocal arrangements, the background vocals. So I do think it stands up really well to repeated listenings. I find that I'm getting more out of it with each listen, and holds up well from that regard. One of the things I really like about the album is that it is sort of a collaboration with a lot of members of the cabal that Martin talks about. Martin, you usually refer to it in terms of the writers, and you get some of that, right? You've got a Richard Meltzer lyric, you've got John Shirley on there.
Yep.
But some of the larger teams there as well. So you've got David Lucas doing a lot of background vocals, right? And that's so cool, with the work that he did on Agents of Fortune, the vocals on Don't Fear the Reaper. You can hear some of that just real quality to the background vocals throughout this album, and I really like that. You've got Cass and Sultan on it, so some of the newer members of the cabal get to participate. And then Andee Ascalese, who's part of the BOC crew, plays keyboards. So he's really doing the Alan Lanier part of it. And I think he does a great job throughout the album. So really like the collaborative nature. And I want to talk about Richie's role in that in a moment. To me, it sounds like a real band. The band has been together a long time. The rhythm section's phenomenal. And I disagree a little bit, Bill, with what you said. So on the archive versions, I had for Curse of the Hidden Mirror, where the Here Comes That Feeling and Stone of Love were done on that, I did not feel like the BOC versions elevated that at all. Buck is, well known for doing very complete demos, right? It's fully realized when he demos a song, and so he doesn't really leave room for collaboration on those. And I thought with Curse of the Hidden Mirror, they didn't elevate them, and so I kind of had that same feeling where it's like, I didn't get anything more than what I already had. I think they do elevate the songs here. I think for Secret Road, especially the rhythm section, the groove on that is really well done, and the groove's not really there on Buck's version, which is great, but I do think they elevate it. And then the trade and lead guitar at the end of Nightmare Epiphany, so you get some of the Ritchie participation there within a fully realized Buck song, but like what they do, live on Last Days of May, where Buck has sort of opened up his world to Ritchie to participate in. I think he did it on Nightmare Epiphany, and it sounds really good. In the Ritchie's role in the band over the last 20 years, mostly, I guess, or most well known is really in the Alan Lanier role, right? So he's doing the keyboards live, he's doing the second guitar live, although he joined the band on stage in like a Joe Bouchard role, so he started out on bass. But I think on this album, he's really playing the Albert Bouchard role, and that he was very prolific, right? He came with the most songs. So he's been, he talked about how when there's been rumors of they're going to record an album, he'll go write some songs for a BOC album. And so he was able to present, a bunch of songs to the band for them to pick out, right? That's what Albert did. You look at all the things that he would bring to the kind of the classic recordings. He always had the most material bringing to it. So had that being prolific. He was very intentional on this album. So Albert in the, especially like Cultosaurus Erectus, right, where he was very purposeful in making Blue Öyster Cult sound like Blue Öyster Cult again. So what he didn't like about Mirrors, he wanted to address in that, and he wrote songs intentionally for Eric's voice. So again, Bill, kind of what you're saying, right? It feels like in some places we're kind of going out of his way to write a VOC styled song. Well, he is, right? Like that is exactly what he's doing. He's played a bunch of the classic songs over the last 20 years and has his thoughts on what he thinks the strengths and nature of those songs are. And he absolutely was. Whether you like it or don't, I like it, but I take your point. He's absolutely trying to write material that sort of fits in with the legacy of the band. And like Albert did on Cultosaurus Erectus, where he wrote songs for Eric's voice, Ritchie did the same thing here, right? Like he's very much trying, and he was like even telling right, so Eric kind of what he had in mind on some of the, they produced each other, so where he's has something in mind, like Edge of the World, he's saying, I'm thinking like it's This Ain't the Summer of Love kind of vocal, right? So he's kind of coaching him, and Eric sounds better than he's sounded in years on this record. He did a really good job. So, and I think just youth and energy and things like that he brings, which Albert, he didn't bring youth, but he brought that high energy to the band, kind of the catalyst to get things done. And I think that's important because, Buck Dharma is not prolific, right? He does not go and intentionally write songs for things. So, Bill, where you're talking about, he is kind of recycling older stuff. Well, I mean, he's kind of always done that because he is when inspiration strikes, he goes off and he just writes a masterpiece, right? He doesn't just write lots of stuff and pick out the best. It's like when it really strikes him, he goes and writes something. And so, Harvest Moon was around for so long, as a Red and the Black song. And I guess you could say it's recycling, but really it's, he's got his, whatever it is, 12, 15 songs of, greatness. That's his likely his lifetime output for songwriting, he expresses himself creatively, I think, during the live solos, right? Like that's sort of his ongoing all the time creative juices. And he just gets these moments of inspiration. All right, I gotta write this particular idea. Not that I have to write a song, but I've got an idea, and he does it. And that's why his demos are so fully realized. I'm sorry I'm talking so long. I had one last point that I wanted to make. And Martin, this is getting to like, you know, some of the uncomfortableness maybe around the heavy material. And I do agree with that. This album also fits in with one other aspect of the legacy of Blue Öyster Cult material, which is their willingness, comfortableness to have some hard rocking, heavy metal type-ish songs where it's a very fine line between tongue-in-cheek and silly. Okay, and I think they've got songs that are very close to the line, and I find them on either side, right? So you've got, you know, like Let Go. You've got Beat 'em Up. It's a band that's comfortable having a song, you know, both beat 'em up and make rock not war on the same album, right? Like total contradictory lyrical ideas, both kind of silly songs, perhaps compared to the, you know, the usual craft of lyrics that we think from the band. You know, Martin, I know your view on the Marshall Plan. I really like it. I think on that one, it's on the tongue-in-cheek side, right? I think they declare that with the album title. I don't think it's tongue-in-cheek and beat 'em up. I think that's just silly. So to me, Stand and Fight and There's a Crime, there's not a lot lyrically going along with either of them. They're rockers, and there's some good lead guitar in them, but you know, I would say that they're within that legacy of those types of songs. They're middle of the pack, probably at best for those. So that would be my one criticism. In terms of rating it, you know, I think it's very solid. Blue Öyster Cult album. They wanted it to fit within the legacy. I think it does do that. To me, it's at the, you know, the level of the sort of maybe not the top tier, but kind of the middle tier records. I would give it overall, I have a Blue Öyster Cult bias, right? So, you know, if I was on the BOC scale of albums, I'd give it an 8 out of 10 probably, of which they only vary between 7 and 10, right? And I would probably, in a more broader view, give it a 9 out of 10. It's a really good album. There's a lot of great stuff in there, and it warrants the continued listening.
All right, so what are you picking for your official, 8 or 9?
Let's go 8.
Okay. All right, well, I've got a few thoughts of my own, and then I want to open up this discussion just a little bit more. So bearing in mind that this show is the Contrarians, sometimes it cracks me up how uncontrarian so many members actually are. So I, not to sound like too much of a jerk, but I am a true contrarian. When somebody tells me that something is good, I instantly look for reasons to dislike it. I don't like people telling me this is the greatest thing ever. You need to love this. It gets my back up, and I'm like, fine, I'm going to find a reason not to love this thing. When The Symbol Remains came out, I remember, frankly, universal praise for it on the YouTube hard rock nerd community, in which I include myself. That's not an insult. Just people that like hard rock a little bit too much, right? Everybody was talking about how awesome it was. So I was like, well, screw that. I'm going to find reasons to not enjoy this album. And I did. There are reasons to not enjoy the album. I let it sit fallow for a while. And in preparation for this episode, I've been listening to it. And damned if I didn't like it a whole lot more once I had gotten away from people telling me that I needed to love it. But that doesn't mean that I think it's flawless. I like the fact that it's kind of a tour of BOC. It's not really a greatest hits, right? But it's a little bit of everything BOC does. You have the poppy Buck Dharma songs like there's a, doggone it. Sorry, I'm having a box in my head. I was thinking Head in the Box, Man in the Box. There's so that's a really poppy song. You have the numbers like Secret Road, and Edge of the World and Nightmare Epiphany that are a little bit more occult oriented, and they deal with conspiracy theories. You have some biker rock, you have some very nearly heavy metal. And that's like BOC's career on an album. I think Buck Dharma has never played better. He may not have recorded an album since 2001, but he is a guitar playing fool on this album. His lines are so fluid. It's just amazing. But unquestionably, the MVP of the album is Richie Castellano. And this is, I think, really going to make or break the album, is how you feel about that. So I do absolutely agree that Richie is trying to sound like BOC because he can't do anything else, right? Because he's not one of the original guys. Only the original guys organically sound like BOC. Once you get past that, you have no choice but to try to recreate something. And even though I think he gets mighty close, it still makes it a little bit artificial because he's not one of the original guys. And I like his songwriting a whole lot better than I like his lyrics. My main thing with this album is that it's constantly leaving me going, I used to like their lyrics much better than what I'm getting on this album. Even a song like The Alchemist, which is a story-based song, it's a very obvious story. There's no subtlety to it. It's just a narration of events. It's good and I enjoy it. I enjoy the music, especially. I enjoy the singing. The fact that, you know, Richie has 2 songwriting credits where he's the sole credit. That's pretty amazing on a new BOC album. So how you feel about Richie's participation in the album is, I think, how you're going to feel about the whole album. I think Eric and Buck, again, these are guys that are over 70 years old. It's just frankly phenomenal that they put out an album this good. Could it have been better? I don't think so. At this point in their lives, at this point in their careers, I really do not see how a better product would have been possible. But that doesn't mean that I don't think there was room for better product. So I'm going to come down as a 7, but on the way up, kind of like Bill. The more I listen to it, the more I get into it. And unlike Martin, I think I actually like the rockers better than I like the more mellow songs, the poppier songs. And I was shocked when they did Train True in concert. They did, I think, 3 songs off of The Symbol Remains in concert. I know they did Train True and they did, oh, my head tonight. They did Tainted Blood, and I think they did a 3rd one. I think they did Box in My Head, but I'm not 100% certain of that. But
They've
still,
done The Alchemist live as well.
Did they? Yeah, I didn't remember that at this point. I mainly remember I was complaining before the show started that by the time they got to Dallas, they didn't have enough T-shirts to sell. And I thought, come on, guys, first album in 20 years and you don't have enough T-shirts? It's pretty lame. Anyway, I'm going to give it, I said, 7 out of 10. Now, let's get back to overrated versus fantastic comeback album. Let's hit that specific point. Todd, you're on the spot, buddy. What do you think?
Wait, what do you mean? Oh, you mean picking what this is? Is it one or the other?
Yes.
And what are my choices again?
Between those 2 polls, it's overrated or it's a fantastic comeback album. Where do you sit?
The fantastic comeback album, just because of the amount of time that has passed.
Okay. All right, Bill.
Just because of that, but mostly because of that.
If I have to choose between the 2, I'm going to stick with my initial thought of overrated, just because, as you said, the praise was so universal. But also, as I said, it definitely is growing on me. So that may change with time and continued listening. So I have hopes that it's going to continue to please me more as time goes on.
Okay. Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's appropriately rated. So I'll go with the that it's a glorious comeback, and I think just on the best Easter egg maybe of all time in Box in My Head, it's got the brandy Easter egg. So if you haven't caught that, go listen. on one of the choruses, they do a "You're a Fine Girl," and it's so cool. They're musicologists, they're music geeks, and there's lots to uncover in there.
Okay, Martin, what do you think? Great comeback, overrated?
Oh, you're killing me. Because I rant so often in so many ways about that word overrated and getting it right. Right. So the fact of the matter is, this was so highly rated. So it's pretty easy just by definition to call it overrated. But comeback from what? Come back from 19 years away. Come back, I suppose, from Curse of the Hidden Mirror, which feels a little blah, I guess, in a way. But I love the kind of weird creative bravery and the way everything sort of holds together on that album. There's something about that album that seems really mature. I don't know. I guess if I've got to be a stick in the mud and be and be strict about the semantics of all this, you're just gonna have to say it was a little bit overrated.
Okay, man, I love the semantics. So yeah, again, based on the fact that everybody just heaps universal praise on this album, I have to agree that it's overrated. I'm not sure that I think it's a comeback at all. I mean, yeah, they had been 20 years since they put out an album, basically, but they never went anywhere, right? And their music is so consistent, really, from the very first album up until The Symbol Remains. They're within a very narrow window of quality. So I don't think it steps out enough to really be a comeback, in my opinion. So there you have it. For what it's worth, the Contrarians, 4 out of 5 of us think it's overrated. And Matt's a fanatic, so you have to take him with a grain of salt. No offense. So thank you for joining us this evening. I hope that you've enjoyed it. The Contrarians have a fantastic Patreon situation. If you're interested, it's a great group of people. We love talking about music. They also sell t-shirts. Links will be in the description. And I hope that you join us for another show very soon. Thanks for tuning in.
All right. See you guys later. Thanks again.
Thanks, Martin.
Yep. See ya.